Okay, let's say this represents our child's life, 18 years under our roof. Can you see okay? And this is when they're born. This is 6 years old, 12 years old, 18 years old. Now, there's two overarching dynamics, responsibilities we have with our kids as parents. We have to protect them, and we have to prepare them to be out on their own, right? When they're first born, this is the age of protection. Because they can't do anything. I mean, we have to feed them and clothe them, and we determine what they're going to see on television. Don't hit it yet. Once I'm home. And all that stuff. So we have to protect them because they're just little babies. Now watch this. Age of protection goes out here pretty strong. Now look at the 6. You start to back that way down. It goes into a nosedive between 6 and 12. Why? Because between 6 and 12 is the fastest maturation biologically, intellectually, emotionally. Kids they're just really fast, and so you want to protect them less as they between here. What is this now? This is the age of preparation. So as I'm protecting them less, what am I doing now? What's getting bigger? I'm preparing them more. And one of the ways you, when it comes to dropping off protections, you let them make a lot of their own decisions. Now, if you let them make decisions, I can guarantee you something. They will make lousy ones. They will make some lousy. They're just their first shot at it, you know? Okay, no problem. Don't freak out. Don't take it personally. Just respond. Just discipline correct as you go, so forth. And then they come out here. Now, here's the problem I see with performance-based, fear-based, legalistic, sin management, evangelical behavioral modification styles of parenting, which they're all kind of clumped into one big one, right? They start the age of protection here, and they maintain it the whole way. And they get here to 18. And they've been making their decisions all the way. Or if you let them make decisions and it just doesn't feature your fancy, you critique. Oh, I don't know. I wish that bothers me. And so they never feel like they really do have permission to go out there and even try things and possibly make mistakes. So that now they get out to 18 and we protect them all the way. We haven't prepared them. Then you send them off to the university. And they drink beer by the keg and buy condoms by the gross. I say, what happened? Well, we didn't bring them up to speed. You got to bring them up to speed. And so this is very counter to what you're going to hear in most parenting plans that are about behavior. But I'm saying this is about relationship, and I want to walk through with them. Okay? Now, let's talk about connecting. Everybody get your picture of that? There you go. And it'll be over there on the side, too. I was a youth pastor when I came out of Dallas. I went to Dallas Seminary. Darcy and I got married and went to Dallas, and then I went to be a youth pastor at a church in Arizona. And they allowed me each year, 1 week, to go to some kind of event that would sharpen my thinking and so forth. Something it would be like ELF would be something like that. So there was this big youth pastors gathering in Minneapolis. And I got to go to that. They paid my way to go to that. Well, I got there, and there was this one youth pastor from the northwest part of the U.S. that was kind of the guru that everybody was coming to hear. He was the hot shot, and he had the biggest youth ministry, and he was seeing kids come to Christ right and left, and he had incredible discipleship programs, and so he was the big star. And I was looking forward to hearing what he had to say. Well, I came there, and there was a little coffee shop restaurant on the edge of the big hotel we were at. And I knew one of the guys that was helping make this whole thing happen. And he saw me, and I said hello to him. And as I was there, here comes the big guru, the big star. Came in, and of course they're friends. And they sat down, and they invited me down for coffee. And there was like 5 or 6 of us sitting there, and this guy's kind of holding court there. And I'm listening to him. And we were sitting there about an hour just talking away. Basically, he's talking, but I noticed a lot of personal pronouns. A lot of me, my, I, my team, my stuff, my curriculum, my whatever, my ministry. I kept hearing that a lot. But, I'd give him the benefit. At that point, I just want to hear what he has to say. And well, then, two girls, they were like college age, young 20s, came through from the outside. They were working their way through the restaurant into the lobby of the hotel, and they had some bags. And suddenly he stopped and he looked at them, "Where have you been?" And they were apparently girls that are on his team, his ministry team. They said, "Where have you been?" "Oh, we went out shopping, we had a little extra." "You didn't have permission to go out shopping. You have to clear that with me. You didn't talk to me about that. We're not here to do that kind of stuff. We're here to serve, and you do what I tell you to do." And it just humiliated these girls in front of everybody. And at that point, I didn't want to hear another word he had to say. I was done with him. I didn't care how many people he was leading to Christ. I didn't care how many he was discipling or how effective his tools were. As far as I were, just smoke and mirrors. He did not represent the heart of God. He had the mind, he had the knowledge, but he was a fraud. As far as I was concerned, you just don't do that. That said to me, Jesus isn't present tense in his life. Jesus would never talk to them. He would never humiliate somebody like that. He would never show his muscle and all that stuff. I was done with him. By the way, God was done with him in about 3 years. He so imploded because he had this big ego trip ministry. If we're going to do ministry through church or whatever, through parachurch, we've got to make sure that we are representing the whole gospel, not just the plan of salvation or the doctrinal side of it. And when it comes to our churches, you need to know something, that what's happening at home has more to do with how this kid's going to turn out than what's happening at church. Darcy, when we were young parents, we did what a lot of young parents do in our church. Our church kind of expects everybody to kind of pull some time in the nursery. And no matter who you are, you just you sign up and do. And so we would work in a nursery, and you get there, and the parents would come drop off their kids, and they go to worship and all this stuff. I remember two different couples. We knew them well, and they would drop their children off. And one couple was really committed to living out the gospel with their kids. Now, they were new believers. They didn't know their way around the Bible a whole lot. They didn't know all the doctrinal nuances, but they were committed that they wanted to raise this kid and pass on the gospel through their lives to him. And they prayed a lot. They trusted God. They didn't know what they were doing, but they were committed. Then there was another couple that came in, and they were fairly young believers, but they believed that they just did not have what it takes and never could, that they needed to depend on the church. And they expected the church to be able to bring the heavy water to the kids. And so forth. Now, our church, those two boys went through the exact same programs. They had the exact same Sunday school teachers, exact same camp experiences, a vacation Bible school, Awana. They went through both of them, identical. We spent the same amount of money on both of those kids. We brought the same amount of talent to both those kids. But the parents that were taking Jesus home and being deliberate about it, even though they were feeble and fumbling along, that kid grew up to have a passionate love for Jesus, and the other kid grew up to be codependent. They now bring their kids to church, and they expect the church to do the work for them. So all I'm saying is that if you think the way we solve this is we just add more staff, add more program, add more budget, you're kidding yourself. We added all that stuff, but the difference was at home. These parents were more interested in fix my kid programs than build my kid programs. They were more interested in rescue me programs than challenge me programs. And so we need to be serious about equipping parents and getting strong marriages. The first thing there says, God's love is best nurtured through spiritually thriving families. That's the point I'm trying to build up to. God's love is best nurtured through spiritually thriving families. And God is not even vague about his agenda. He comes right out of the blocks. Genesis chapter 1. Let us make man in our own image. In the image of God he made him, male and female he created them. And he said, be fruitful, multiply, fill the earth, subdue it. Leave your father and mother, cleave to one another, become one flesh. Between Genesis 1 and 2. God could have made a country right out of the blocks. He didn't. He could have made a country club. He could have made a committee. He could have made a corporation. He didn't. He made a family. And that was his plan for carrying his heart down through the ages. It was a family. You say, well, what about the church? He didn't make a church. He could have. He didn't. You say, well, he did make a country, Israel. What is Israel? It's based on Jacob's kids, his 12 sons. It's a family story. And what is the church? Now let's go to the church. What about the church? Well, you know my favorite definition of family is by the late Pope John Paul. He referred to family as the domestic church. Think about that. It's the domestic church. It's the smallest church out there. Our churches are only as strong as the family showing up. It's only as healthy as the spiritual health of the family showing up. And that's why I think we kid ourselves to think that if we have great programming and so forth for 2 hours on Sunday, that we can offset the carpet bombing our culture and the forces of evil are doing against our people. It's just naive. They've got to have Jesus in their heart, and they got to have him thriving in their home. Now, the good news is you don't have to have a seminary education to do that well. You just have to have the Holy Spirit and a Bible. That's all you need. And obviously a willing heart. So because he didn't make all these things, he made a family. We need to take this seriously because I believe that I actually had this in your notes earlier. I didn't talk about it. I think this was on the first day. But we had a little thing in there about the strength of the family and what it determines. It obviously determines the strength of our churches. And I think I already made the statement before that strong churches don't make strong families make strong churches. Never forget that. And when we get that, then pastors get serious about making sure we're equipping our marriages and we're focused. We're more than just desiring strong, healthy. We're doing substantive things to make that happen. No, look, I'm not discounting evangelistic outreaches. I'm not discounting. Those have their place. There's still a lot of lost there that are not connected to any Christian family. And formal discipleship programs, I'm all for those things. Obviously, I believe we should teach the Word very thoroughly every time we get together and open up the book. I'm all for that. But I think we tend to give lip service to strong families and strong parenting. And yet, Satan doesn't give lip service to it. He dials his laser dot on them all the time. Because he's read the Bible too, and he realizes this was God's plan. So if I'm going to undermine his plan, I got to nail that marriage. And I got to take out those families. And if I can take out the marriage, I can get the kids. They're done for. And so we've got to be deliberate about that. Because the strength of family, listen to this, determines the health of our churches, the influence of the gospel. Strong families determine the impact of world missions. They determine the conscience of political leadership. They determine the character of our military and our first responders. Strong families determine the heart of our educational system, the ethics of our scientific community, the morality of our arts and entertainment, and the integrity of our business community. All those people come from families. And we tend to make programs to try and fix the marketplace, to fix the arts, to fix the military, to fix the politics. And I'm saying, okay, short term, we may have to do that. But long term, if we want to do it and we have any chance of really having any substance, let's start fixing the families now. And it might take a couple generations to get there. But here's the good news.
That was in the second.
Yeah, it was in the second outline you had. The sins of the father return to the third and fourth generation of those who hate me. Exodus chapter 20. And you can see this also in Deuteronomy. You say, well, we're living that one out. But he says, but their righteousness returns to thousands in Exodus 20. Thousands of what? Generations? Well, you would assume that. The context is, well, go over to Deuteronomy chapter 7, verse 9, and it says it. It returns to thousands of generations. And so, I always say, the shelf life of our parents, and by the way, is of those parents who hate me. It's not parents who don't know him. There's a lot of parents that don't hate God, they just don't know him. He's talking about those who are antagonistic to God. That has an impact on kids. Like Dr. Lennox was saying with the atheists, his parents were atheists, that has an impact. He said, but I look at the shelf life of righteousness, and it just kind of keeps going and going and going and going. Or I should say the half-life. if you know anything about chemistry and stuff. It just kind of keeps going. So, we in our country, we've created World War II was the end of World War II started a downward spiral when it comes to the parents carrying the spiritual water at home, because we had an abundant economy after that, and people started moving from the country to the suburbs, and they got churches big enough to afford a professional, not only senior pastor, but children's pastor or youth pastor. And then the Christian school movement started in 1971-72 in the U.S. By the way, you know what launched the evangelical Christian school movement? You probably wouldn't. Anybody have any clue what triggered it? It was busing and the integration of our public schools. That's what triggered it. You just look at the law. The law came in, and then suddenly the white Christians said, my kids are not going to go to school with those black people. We'll start a Christian school. And it all started with nobility. It sounds so great. It was started based on racism. And by the way, that's not an indictment that we shouldn't put our kids in Christian schools. Christian schools have their place, and there's some wonderful Christian schools out there. But that was a reaction to something over here. And I think it also accommodated parents not wanting to have to do the work. Well, let the smart people at the school do it, or at the church. Now, I don't know what it's like in Western Europe or Eastern Europe, but I do think the sense of parents wanting us to do all the heavy stuff is there regardless of whether it came there economically or not. And so if we're not careful, what they want is program. Give me another program. And we end up in ministry, like I call it, like program directors on evangelical cruise ships. It's just another program, until we get them to take Jesus home. We're just, we're never going to be able to offset this. And I believe greater is he who is in us than is in the world. So, all that said, the reason I have a problem with all these methods that we've created is they don't work. And, what is it? If you're riding a dead horse, dismount. It's dead. It's not going to take you anywhere. My favorite quote of all times is by the late John Wayne, our great actor. He said, "Life is tough, but it's tougher if you're stupid." And I don't want to be stupid in my ministry. I want to work smart. And that's why I think this makes all the difference. Okay, number 2, God's love is best illustrated through churches and homes that reflect his gracious heart. Now, let me give you an illustration for this. Would you say that since you came here to let's confine it to here in this little world that we've been living in the mornings here in our network, would you say that we try and have the class real presentable for you when you get here? And do you think we've worked hard to have nice quality PowerPoints and nice little touches with music and things like that to make it look good? And we try and wash up in the morning and look somewhat presentable. Darcy kind of trumps us all, but Kory and I, we do our best. And would you say that we've tried to give focus to the Lord? And when we've used the Scripture, would you say we've used it accurately? And one final, have we spoke respectfully to you? We've tried not to, never want to speak down to anybody. Would you say that we've done that? Okay. But what if it was 40.5 degrees Celsius in here the whole time? I did this, I hope I got this right on the thing. Or what if it was minus 1 degree Celsius the whole time and you're dressed just like you are right now? It wouldn't matter how nice the things were, how accurately the Bible was, or how passionately we did it. It wouldn't matter. You'd either be so hot you cannot concentrate, or you'd be so cold. And see, that's the problem in our churches when grace isn't in place. We've got the truth down cold. We've got the doctrine right on. We have orthodoxy. You can't be questioned. We're right on it, and we're teaching all and all this stuff. And yet, you don't sense the passionate love and tender heart of God. It's like that youth pastor, the hotshot. When I saw how cold and wicked and selfish and mean-spirited his heart was, I don't care how good you are, how clever you are. It means nothing now. Because they've got to sense Jesus in us. Not just his doctrine and his truth. They got to sense him. And the only way they can sense him is we've got to be in relationship with him. Not just an intellectual ride with him. Our obedience doesn't come by what we believe about him. It comes because we love him. And people sense that. So we want to have this happen in our churches so they can happen at home. I love this. This is from the Message. Amos chapter 5, verse 21, 24. Is that in your notes? Look at this. I can't stand your religious meetings. I'm fed up with your conferences and conventions. I want nothing to do with your religion projects, your pretentious slogans and goals. I'm sick of your fundraising schemes, your public relations and image making. I've had all I can take of your noisy ego music. When was the last time you sang to me? Do you know what I want? I want justice, oceans of it. I want fairness, rivers of it. That's what I want. That's all I want. Now, this isn't a put down. It's just an observation that we need grace in place in our life. But as we talked about, and we don't have to go into it anymore, grace makes a lot of people nervous, makes a lot of parents nervous, because I think the average evangelical out there does not get grace. They confine it to saving grace. They don't get the bigger picture. They confuse it with nice. They're not synonyms. They confuse it with license. There's no such thing as biblical grace that lets people get away with anything. They confuse it with a lot of things that it's not. And I think, by the way, I think it's part of the delusion that the power of darkness has done to us as evangelicals. He knows the most powerful agent for the gospel is a person that truly treats people like Jesus treats people, loves people the way Jesus loves them. Ephesians chapter 4, verse 1 through 3. I, therefore, a prisoner of the Lord, urge you to walk in a manner worthy of the calling to which you have been called, with all humility, gentleness, with patience, bearing with one another in love, eager to maintain the unity of the Spirit in the bond of peace. Which brings number 3. God's love is best transferred through well-thought-through strategy that is guided by God's truth. There's all of our doctrine and apologetics, and tempered by his grace. We've talked about John 1:14 before. Look at this. There's the truth and grace in 2 Peter 3:18. But grow in the grace and knowledge of our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. And when we do that, everything changes. So now I want Kory to come up here and do the 4th point for us, because he has something that wants. Kory is the family pastor of a major, mega church in Arizona. He oversees a lot of departments. He has a lot to weigh in on this and what it looks like.
Well, the gospel is best leveraged when churches and families operate in a partnership. Before I took my position as the family pastor at our church, I was working in just a regular secular job. I worked for Philips Electronics. Gail and I had been attending this church for 38 years. It's the same church that Tim was a youth pastor at. And so we've known Tim and Darcy for all of those 38 years. Tim was on our board of elders at the time, and they were looking for this family pastor role. And they had decided, as they were in a committee going through all of these things, they were trying to decide, what do we want in a family pastor? What kind of a family ministry do we want here at Scottsdale Bible, which is our church? And one of the other elders had just recently taken a trip to Disneyland. Do you guys know what Disneyland is? Okay. Well, in Disneyland, there's there's all these different lands. There's Adventureland, Tomorrowland, Fantasyland, and they have different rides in each of these different places. But when you go from Tomorrowland to Fantasyland, even though the rides and the themes are a little bit different, you still know you're in Disneyland. even though you kind of changed boundaries a little bit, you know you haven't gone outside the park. And so when we were trying to create a theme for everything, we kind of wanted, when our kids go from diapers to nursery school, to grade school, to junior high, to high school, into college, we knew that we needed to treat them a little differently as they went along, but they're still in our Disneyland or still in our world. But we kind of had different lands as we were going through them. And the other themes that we wanted to be consistent as we went through as well, as we looked at like Tim's house, we knew that even if our children were in diapers, they still had these three inner needs. They still needed their freedoms. They still needed their character built. They still needed to be pointed at true greatness. And so each of these themes we're going to run through our children's ministry, our junior high ministry, our high school ministry, and our college ministry. So we wanted to have the themes be the same so that we were consistent, so that if you were a family in our church and your kids stayed from the time they were born until they graduated from college and were ready to get married, that they would be getting a consistent theme of this whole idea of grace-based relationships. And so that's what we did. In our country, you'll have supermarkets, okay, or big grocery stores. Well, we also have what they call big home improvement stores. Like if you need a shovel or to buy lumber or hardware, we have big home improvement stores. And one of the biggest is a store called Home Depot, okay? And they're all across the United States. And in Home Depot, they have a slogan. And that slogan for Home Depot says this. It says, "You can do it, we can help." And so what we did at our church is we stole that motto and that slogan. And
borrowed it.
yeah, well, we permanently borrowed it from them. And we tell all of our parents this whole thing, so that because what we don't want is we don't want the parents subcontracting out to us, the church, and making us responsible for the spiritual life of their children. So what we tell all of our parents, and we educate them on this, you can do it, we can help. Our job is to help you and empower you as parents to be the spiritual leaders in your home. And here's how we're going to do it, is we're going to support you as parents, because we're going to teach you how to do either a baby dedication or maybe an infant baptism, depending on your church. So on this map, you can see that there's all these different waypoints as they go down the map. And so this is like
0 to 18.
Yeah, so this is as your kids are getting older. And so what we do is we offer classes for our parents. And we advertise them, and all of our parents know this. So we'll offer a class on baby dedication. So before we bring the infants up in front of the church, they have to go through a class. Okay, and when they come to our class, we teach them one of the things about you being a parent is our church has a philosophy of grace-based relationships. And what do? We give them a copy of Tim's book. So every parent that's going to dedicate their kids, they get a copy of that book. And then also we teach them about how to give a blessing to their child. And so we talk about a blessing, about the parent speaking a verbal blessing over their children. We even have them write out a blessing for their children when they come up to do their baby dedications and whatnot. So that's part of that class. We also have times where we educate and prepare children in the area of love, sex, and honor. So I teach a class to all our parents on how to talk to your kids about sex, and when to talk to your kids about sex, and what to say to them. How do you do it? And we encourage them. And again, the whole thing is trying to empower the parents. So we have a class about how to talk to your kids about sex. Okay, and the first thing I tell them in this class is I tell them, I don't want you to have a conversation with your kids about sex. I want you to have 1,000 conversations with your kids about sex. Okay. Also, as a bonus, I tell them this will be the first and only time you get to say the words penis and vagina in church and not get in trouble.
Exactly. Yeah.
Well, also, we have classes on how to figure out your child's unique personal bent. And so we'll go through there and we'll try and teach our parents that every one of their kids has been built and hardwired differently by God. And however God made them, you don't want to try and parent against that. You want to figure out how God created your child unique and different, and how can you nurture that and use that, because that's the way God made them. We also talked to them about rites of passage, about how to have marked rites of passage for their children when they're turning 12 or 13, or maybe when they're turning 18. Different things you can do with them to mark those times in their life. We identify their spiritual giftedness. How can they know what spiritual gift they were given when they accepted Christ as their Savior? We want to equip them to be deliberate about being lights in their world, and about how to, as a family, think about evangelism and how they can do that. About providing a ceremony or some way to mark their preparation for launch into adulthood. So maybe at age 16, they're almost on the cusp of being real adults, and so we'll help parents work through the teenage years by marking that with their kids on how to get them ready to be launched off. Also, for our kids that are in high school, we teach them, and also our college kids, about putting their future marriage into perspective. And so we'll teach our kids when they're older how not to marry a jerk. That's one of the names of our class. And so we try and educate them on that as well.
By the way, the unique thing here too is that what most people do is they teach about dating or purity, being a virgin when you get married, and I think that's where we get in trouble, because what we should be teaching them about is marriage, in which this is the route we're going through to get there, so they don't, because a lot of people sabotage their marriage before they ever get there, maybe with somebody they didn't even marry. So we try and aim them at that. And then I also think we're all also better off, rather than saying our goal is to get you to your marital bed a virgin. See, that's a goal that can be easily lost. Then what do? You feel like a loser as a parent? They feel like a loser? Lockdown. Well, we would love them to get there that way, but we say, no, you want to pursue purity as a way of life, and you pursue it until you take your last breath. That's how you pursue it. And it's not just a thing to the marital, to the honeymoon. It's for marriage too. And by introducing it early on, I think, and then weaving that in through just train them for marriage, that rather than just dating, everything else. Yeah.
When we continue on, we teach them how to be spiritually ready for college and how to flourish in college, where we know that they're going to meet a lot of opposition in their classes and whatnot, but how to maintain their faith even through that. Then also we teach the grandparents in our church about how to do what we call extreme grandparenting, so that they can be terrific grandparents in their later age. Now, one of the things I want you to notice about this map is, you see these signposts across the top here? You'll notice that they might sound real familiar. Part of preparing them is understanding their inner needs. Freeing them up is learning how to give them freedom. Empowering them is partly giving them character traits so that they'll be ready to enter the world. And then aiming them. What are we going to aim them at? We're going to aim them at true greatness. And so these are kind of the banners that fly over all of these different areas, because it's a consistent theme regardless of what age you're at as they're going through and we're teaching them. Now, one of the things we found is when I became the family pastor at our church about 3 years ago, I realized that one of the first things we're going to have to do at our church was that all of these things, these ideas of the way we treat each other and the way we respond to each other in grace, it had to be true about our team, okay? Because if it wasn't true about our team, we're going to have no chance of transferring that to our parents. And if we can't transfer it to our parents, we'll never be able to transfer it to our kids. And so Tim wrote a book recently called The Church and Home, Connecting Church and Home. And so while he was still writing this, I got the galley proofs and the Word documents. And so we were reading this as a staff while he was still writing it. And so we went through this book chapter by chapter as a staff. And it was kind of amazing, even the transition we had inside our church and our church staff. A number of our ladies, one in particular named Renee, talked about, darn it, why didn't Tim write these books earlier? Because I've messed up my whole family, you know? And I wish I'd have known about this 5-10 years ago when my kids were young. I said, Renee, honey, you know what? You know it now, and it's never too late. Wherever you are, just start. Start treating the people in your life with grace like this, because it's never too late to start. And so we saw a significant change just in how our departments and the people on our own staff started changing, and how they started treating each other differently because they started to internalize it. In fact, when we have staff meetings, sometimes I would come to the staff meeting with a piece of paper for everybody, and there was an outline of the house and all those squares, but none of the things were filled in, you know? And so I'd pass out the thing, and the first thing they had to do was they had to fill in the house, because I want them to memorize it. I want them to get all 17 points down, because what it did for us, it gave us a common language that we could use as an entire church staff as we talked about these things, so that it could first off become true about us as a staff, and the way we treat each other with grace would start to reflect God's heart, and then it would enable us and empower us to turn around and love our families as well. And it's been really fun because we have all these different classes, and I only teach one of the classes. We have lay people from our church that have gone through, and now they're the teachers of all these classes for us, and it's great because they give real examples and lots of different ways of looking at each of these things. So it's been a real blessing to our church as we talk to our families about how to do this and how to live this out.